The cafe was deceptively cozy, its warm lights and soft jazz a stark contrast to the tension coiled in Jungkook's chest. He sat at a corner table, a half-empty coffee cup in front of him, his hands gripping the edge of the seat to steady himself. The earpiece in his ear buzzed faintly, Jimin's calm voice feeding him updates. Team 1 in position. Team 2 sweeping the perimeter. Stay natural, Jian, but nothing about this felt natural. Jungkook was bait, a decoy meant to draw out Seojin or Yoongi's men, and every glance from a stranger sent his pulse spiking. The plan was simple: appear vulnerable, unguarded, while Taehyung's team waited in the shadows. But as Jungkook forced himself to sip the coffee, his eyes darting to the window where city lights blurred through the glass, he felt exposed, a target painted on his back. Taehyung's words from the training room, "You're changing my heart," were a lifeline, anchoring him, but the fear of failure, of letting Taehyung down, gnawed at his resolve. "Jian, you're doing fine," Jimin's voice crackled through the earpiece. "We've got eyes on a suspicious vehicle across the street." "Keep steady," Jungkook nodded slightly, a subtle acknowledgement, and forced himself to lean back, mimicking casualness. His sweater and jeans were deliberately ordinary, meant to sell the image of a regular guy caught in a billionaire's mess. But every rustle of the cafe door, every shadow passing by, made his heart race. He thought of his mother's frail smile, Junghan's worried texts, and Taehyung's fierce protectiveness, reasons to stay strong, to see this through. The door chimed, and a man in a dark coat entered, his eyes scanning the room before landing on Jungkook. The stranger's gaze was too sharp, too deliberate, and Jungkook's stomach twisted. He forced himself to look away, stirring his coffee, but his earpiece buzzed urgently. "Possible contact," Jimin said. "Don't engage." "Team 2's moving in." The man approached the counter, ordering a drink, but his glances kept drifting to Jungkook, lingering too long. Jungkook's hands trembled, and he muttered under his breath, "Is this in hold position?" Jimin replied, "We're running facial recognition." Before Jungkook could respond, the man moved, slipping out the side exit with a speed that screamed intent. The earpiece erupted with commands. "Team 2, pursue." "Team 1, secure Jian," and Jungkook's heart pounded as two of Taehyung's men, disguised as patrons, rose from nearby tables, ushering him toward the back door. The alley behind the cafe was cold, the air sharp with the scent of damp concrete. Jungkook's escorts moved swiftly, their hands on his shoulders, but a sudden shout from the street made them freeze. "Get down!" one barked, pushing Jungkook behind the dumpster as tires screeched and voices clashed, Jimin's team intercepting the suspect. Jungkook's breath came in shallow gasps, the chaos overwhelming. He pressed himself against the wall, the earpiece buzzing with updates. "Suspect detained. Not Seokjin. Low-level operative. We are pulling you out, Jian," but the fear lingered, a reminder of how close danger had come. Minutes later, a black SUV pulled into the alley, and the door flew open to reveal Taehyung, his expression a storm of relief and fury. He strode toward Jungkook, his dark coat billowing, and pulled him into a fierce embrace, his arms tight enough to steal Jungkook's breath. "You're safe," Taehyung murmured, his voice rough, trembling with barely contained emotion. "Thank God you're safe." Jungkook clung to him, the warmth of Taehyung's body grounding him, the scent of cedar and smoke a stark contrast to the alley's chill. "I'm okay," he whispered, his voice shaking. "It worked, right?" You got someone. Taehyung pulled back just enough to cut Jungkook's face, his eyes searching, intense. We got a pawn, he said, his voice low, raw. Not Seokjin, but enough to rattle them. You did good, Jin. Too damn good. His thumb brushed Jungkook's cheek, a tender gesture that sent a shiver through him. But don't ever scare me like that again. Jungkook's heart raced, the adrenaline fading into something warmer, deeper. I was scared too, he admitted, his voice soft, his eyes locked on Taehyung's. But I kept thinking of you. Of us. Taehyung's gaze darkened, a flicker of longing breaking through his control. Us, he echoed, his voice barely audible, a vow and a question. He leaned closer, their breaths mingling, and for a moment, Jungkook thought he might kiss him, might let the spark between them ignite. But Taehyung stopped, his jaw clenching as he pulled back, his hands dropping to Jungkook's shoulders. We need to move, he said, his tone reverting to command, though it carried a tremor of restraint. Jimin's team will debrief for the estate. You're not leaving my side until this is over. Jungkook nodded, his heart still pounding, the almost kiss lingering like a promise. As they climbed into the SUV, Taehyung's hand rested on his, a quiet anchor in the chaos. The operation had worked, but Seokjin was still out there, and the danger was far from over. Yet, as the city blurred past, Jungkook felt Taehyung's presence beside him, fierce and unwavering, and knew he was fighting for more than a legacy now, he was fighting for them. The estate's security room was a fortress of tension, the ethic with the aftershocks of the cafe operation. Jungkook sat at the conference table, his hands clasped tightly to steady their lingering tremble, the adrenaline from the alley still coursing through him. Taehyung's fierce embrace, his murmured "You're safe," echoed in his mind, a lifeline amidst the chaos. Across from him, Taehyung stood, his dark eyes fixed on Jimin as the head of security briefed the team, his presence a quiet storm anchoring the room. Jimin tapped his tablet, pulling up an interrogation transcript. The operative we nabbed, Lee Min-ho, confirmed Seokjin's running the show, he said, his voice clipped, professional. Yoongi's network wants leverage to force Mr. Kim out of the merger vote. They're planning to escalate, public leaks, maybe even a direct move on Jian to prove you're vulnerable. Jungkook's stomach twisted, his role as bait now a stark reality. He glanced at Taehyung, whose jaw clenched, a muscle ticking as he processed the threat. The billionaire's protectiveness was palpable, but Jungkook felt a surge of resolve. He wasn't just a target, he was part of this fight. What's their next step? Taehyung asked, his voice low, dangerous, his eyes never leaving Jimin. Jimin hesitated, his gaze flicking to Jungkook. Minho didn't know specifics, but he mentioned a public spectacle. Seokjin wants to humiliate you, sir. Expose the surrogacy to the media, frame it as a scandal. They're betting it'll tank your credibility with the board. Jungkook's breath caught, the idea of his private role in Taehyung's legacy splashed across headlines making his skin crawl. He opened his mouth to speak, but Taehyung's voice cut through, sharp and final. They won't get the chance, he said, his tone icy. We doubled security on Jian. Leak a counter-narrative, something to discredit Yoongi's network. And find Seokjin. Now, Jimin nodded, but his eyes lingered on Jungkook, a silent question. Jian's exposed, he said carefully. If we keep him in play, it's riskier. We could relocate him. No, Jungkook interrupted, his voice firm. surprising even himself. He met Taehyung's gaze, his heart pounding. I'm not hiding. If they want a spectacle, let's give them one we control. Use me to draw Seongjin out again. Taehyung's eyes narrowed, a storm brewing behind them. You're not bait again, he said, his voice low, almost a growl. With pushed out luck enough, Jungkook leaned forward, his hands unclenching, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. You said we're partners in this, he said, his eyes locked on Taehyung's. I'm not running. Let me help end this. The room went quiet, Jimin and the team exchanging glances, sensing the weight of the moment. Taehyung's gaze bore into Jungkook's, a mix of frustration, fear, and something softer, pride, maybe, or longing. You're impossible, he said finally, his voice rough but tinged with reluctant admiration. We'll discuss it alone. Jimin took the cue, dismissing the team, and the room emptied, leaving Jungkook and Taehyung in a charged silence. The monitor's faint hum was the only sound as Taehyung crossed to Jungkook, stopping just close enough for his presence to feel overwhelming, his dark eyes searching Jungkook's face. You're going to drive me insane, Taehyung said, his voice low, a mix of exasperation and warmth. Why can't you just stay safe? Jungkook stood, closing the distance between them, his heart racing. Because I'm not here to be safe, he said softly, his eyes locked on Taehyung's. I'm here for you. For us. And I'm not letting Seongjin or anyone else tear that apart. Taehyung's breath hitched, his control wavering as Jungkook's words sank in. He reached out, his hand cupping Jungkook's jaw, his thumb brushing over his lower lip in a gesture so intimate it stole Jungkook's breath. You're too much, Taehyung murmured, his voice raw, almost broken. Too brave, too stubborn, too everything. Jungkook leaned into the touch, his hands lifting to rest on Taehyung's chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart. Good, he whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and longing. Because you're stuck with me. Taehyung's eyes darkened, a flicker of desire breaking through his restraint. He leaned closer, their lips mere inches apart, the air between them electric with unspoken need. Jungkook's pulse pounded, his body aching to close the gap, to let the spark between them ignite. But Taehyung froze, his hand tightening briefly on Jungkook's jaw before he pulled back, his expression torn. Not here, Taehyung said, his voice hoarse, strained with effort. Not like this. You deserve more than a stolen moment in a war room. Jungkook's heart ached. The almost kiss a promise deferred, but Taehyung's words, you deserve more, were a vow that warmed him. He nodded, his throat tight, his hands falling from Taehyung's chest. Then give me more, he said softly, his eyes searching Taehyung's. When this is over, Taehyung's lips curved, a faint, bittersweet smile. When this is over, he echoed, his voice a promise. He stepped back, his hand lingering on Jungkook's arm for a moment before falling away. Get some rest. We'll plan the next move tomorrow. As Taehyung left, Jungkook sank into the chair, his heart still racing. The operation had rattled Yoongi's network, but Seokjin's threat loomed larger than ever. Yet, Taehyung's touch, his words, his restraint, they were a fire in Jungkook's chest, fueling his resolve. He was bound to this man, this fight, and as the estate's walls closed around him, Jungkook knew he was ready to face whatever came next, for Taehyung and for the future they were building together.